Welcome, everybody, to a very special edition of UFO Man Live. My name is Tim, or UFO Man, and to my side is my friend, my co-host, Tommy Highway. Tommy?
Folks, I'm Tommy Highway. Want to thank everybody for coming out as always. And just like Tim said, we have a very special guest for you this evening. His name is LUE Elizondo, and he is the former director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or ATIP. He was instrumental in the very reason that we've been able to view the gimbal video, the Go Fast video, as well as the Tic Tac incident. This man has intimate knowledge of the UAP phenomenon, and it is our honor and my privilege to bring you Mr. LUE Elizondo. LUE, welcome to the show.
Tim, Tommy, thank you so much for having me. It's truly a sincere pleasure and honor for me to be here with you and your wonderful audience this evening.
Okay, this evening we're going to address some issues in the chat room, but before we do that, we're going to ask a few questions ourselves, and Tommy and I have prepared them ahead of time, so we're ready. Tommy, should I take the first question?
Please do.
Okay. All right, LUE, I'm going to get down to the brass tacks here. What made you transition from a military career into becoming the director of the ATIP program with a partial focus on UAPs?
Well, I first of all, I didn't ask for the position. I was in essence voluntold. I suspect my background as a counterintelligence special agent was mostly focused on counterterrorism, counterespionage, and to some degree counter-narcotics and counter-guerrilla counterinsurgency operations. And so most of my career is spent all over the world, really just chasing bad guys. But during a younger part of my, if you will, of my early career when I was a younger special agent, I did a lot of work on the protection of advanced aerospace technology. So think of when you're doing counterintelligence, not only are you trying to figure out what the bad guy knows about you, but in doing so, what they know about your capabilities, your strengths, your weaknesses, etc. So part of that is we spend in the country billions of dollars each year trying to maintain a competitive advantage over our adversaries. And when it comes to the military, avionics and aerospace technology is really the crown jewels. It's the cutting edge of our military capabilities. So think about technologies such as UAVs. At the time, in the early days, we had the Hunter, the Pioneer program. Later on, Dark Star, which was more of a stealth army type. Think of a really tiny version of a B-2 bomber, if you will, but in a really small package. Think of cruise missile technology, right? Think of the Apache Longbow, helicopter capability. Think about all the places we test our equipment and our radars and our telemetry. So the Electronic Proving Ground, Yuma Proving Ground, Aberdeen Proving Ground. So a lot of my early career focus when I was a young agent, I was assigned to an office out of the 902nd MI Brigade, out of a small office in Arizona, out of Fort Huachuca, Arizona, or I guess more commonly known as Sierra Vista, Arizona. And we had 3 states that we were responsible for from an investigative perspective. So we had California, Nevada, and Arizona. And as you know, there's a lot of things that happen in the states of California, right? You have Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, for example, and a bunch of other organizations. Nevada, right? I probably don't need to go much into detail there. What's in Nevada, and Arizona as well. So early on, probably because of my background in science, I led several efforts in technology protection. I worked with the Open Skies Treaty at the time with the Russians, believe it or not. The America and Russia were kind of friends. So we would work together in counting first stage solid rocket motor boosters and whatnot. So long story short, in 2008, when the 2 individuals came and approached me when I was in Washington, D.C., they found me. I didn't go looking for the program. I suspect that it was because of and I only say this because probably the first 3 meetings we had was all about my background. What type of experience I had. They said, look, we know you're a senior counterintelligence guy. You've got a great reputation, a great career. And tell us a little bit about some of the advanced avionic type systems you worked on. And so I did. And we had some conversations in a secure environment. And I suspect that's what led them to ask me later on to meet the director at the time. Now I can talk about it. His name is Jim Lakatsky, Dr. Lakatsky. Um, until recently, I really couldn't talk about it because he had asked me to keep his identity private. But in essence, it really wasn't until then, that first meeting with Dr. Lakatsky, did I realize that the effort I was being, if you will, I was being assessed for was involving UFOs. And so that's how, kind of the long-winded answer, how did I go from, being at the pointy end of the stick and going after bad guys to being involved in a UFO program? I was asked initially to set up the counterintelligence and security program, if you will, a portfolio for OSAP and ATIP. And later on, I wound up taking charge of that effort.
Thank you. Tommy?
Well, how can I put this? How long after you became part of the ATIP program did you suspect that there's a lot more going on here than the public knows about?
Oh, it's immediate. Well, first of all, the mere fact that the U.S. government's looking at UFOs, right? That's a bit of a mic drop. The fact that we're actually spending money, because you hear all the time, the government doesn't consider that, that's nonsense. It's not serious. We're not going to waste government taxpayer money on, what is now considered perhaps one of the greatest mysteries of our species, of mankind. But that wasn't necessarily the case publicly back in 2008. It was definitely handled more sub rosa, or if you will, below the threshold of visibility within the U.S. Greater U.S. government and the general population. So it was a very small, very nuanced program. It was very dedicated. We had a lot of talented people there, far more talented than myself. Some of the best. Literally, Dr. Lakatsky was one of the world's leading rocket scientists, and I don't mean that he was a smart guy. I mean, he was literally, truly, by definition, a rocket scientist, incredibly intelligent. Some of the people that we had with us, and I cannot mention their names now, but at some point they'll probably become public, were just amazing. We had one female in particular that was just an absolute rock star. And then we had another gentleman that wound up later becoming my deputy in ATIP, and then taking on afterwards a very significant, very prominent role afterwards, after ATIP, after when I left ATIP, within the new UAP task force. And I'll leave that at that.
Okay.
Very good.
I guess I wanted to expound on that a little bit. What was your mission while part of ATIP? And my second part of my question is, did you resign due to excessive secrecy and internal opposition?
So, two-part question. First of all, what was my role, if you will, right? It changed.
Right.
At first, it was just to set up the counterintelligence and security. In 2010, when I was asked to take over the ATIP portfolio and become its director or chief, or whatever nom de jour you want to use, the senior guy, it became a little bit more substantial, because now you're trying to fight for budgets, right? You're trying to fight for resources, trying to get more interagency elements to come in and work with you to try to help you solve this incredible mystery, while at the same time conducting outreach. And saying, hey, look, Navy, hey, look, Air Force, if you come across something interesting that you're not quite sure what it is, before you just kind of press delete on the keyboard of whatever the video is you guys watching, why don't you send it to us? Let us take a look at that, because that's kind of our job. So my job, my responsibilities evolved over time, as obviously as my time in the position progressed. And then as far as the second part of your question is, why did I resign? Well, I resigned in essence to complete the job that I was given by the DoD in the first place. Look, I didn't ask for the job, and as a result, I spent my entire life in national security. And when you are, as a soldier, you're told to guard a post, you guard that post until you're relieved of that responsibility. Well, that order never came for us. We were never told to stand down, so we kept going. And more and more data kept coming in. And it got to the point where the bureaucracy in this particular case, now I can probably talk a little bit about it. There were some individuals within my chain of command that at the time I couldn't trust. So I was briefing the Secretary of Defense's staff directly because individuals within my own chain of command I could not trust because they already had open IG investigations against them. Now let me preface this.
Wow.
I'm a counterintelligence guy, right? So
Right.
I was aware of these investigations because one of them specifically involved one of my subordinates, one of my colleagues, a female colleague. So I was aware of the shenanigans that were going on. So I had to wind up briefing and going around the chain of command, making sure that at least at the top level of the chain of command, they were informed. And I think that's why you see now what you see. Um, when I left the Department of Defense, and again, I'm going back to your question here, why did I leave? I left because the bureaucracy wouldn't take this topic seriously. We had we had an endemic problem within my chain of command, and by the way, it's still there. Some of these people are still there, and let me just say for the record, despite what you see in the headlines, I'm not done yet. I'm not through. Okay. As you probably have figured out right now, I tend to do a lot of work behind the scenes, and I don't necessarily. I'm not doing this for guts and glory. I'm doing this for my country. So I don't brag about what I do. I don't necessarily gloat or relish in our accomplishments or achievements or taking down people that frankly shouldn't be in those positions. To me, it's part of the mission. It's look, if we want transparency, we want disclosure, we want the truth to be revealed, not only to the people, not only to America and Americans and the taxpayer, but to our national security leaders, those who should have the information but don't. Those are the people who need the information. Our national level policymakers, our people in Congress, right? Whether it's the House of Representatives or the Senate, the President of the United States, the Secretary of Defense. These are individuals who are required, in some cases by law, to have this information, and it was being kept from them. So in essence, I left the Department of Defense to finish the very job that I was given in the first place. I love my Department of Defense. You know, I love the people that work there. I left out of loyalty, not disloyalty, because there's this weird code of ethics in the Department of Defense that, look, if you can't fix a problem from the inside, what you don't want to do is disrupt the apple cart and be a destructive force from within. What you do is you resign, and then you try to fix that problem from outside. And it's this kind of unwritten rule, but if you look at it, it happens a lot. Look, almost to the day, almost a year later after I left, Secretary Mattis, person who I respect very much, did precisely the same thing because he could not make the changes he felt necessary within the administration he was working in at the time. So, there you go. I know it's hard for people to understand that, you leave an organization out of loyalty, not disloyalty, but that's precisely what I did. And it's if any of your people in the audience have served in the military, they've seen that a few times. It's not uncommon, and that's kind of common practice that we tend to uphold within national security apparatus.
Right. Tommy?
Yeah, completely understand where you're coming from there, sir. My question is that Congress, was Congress helpful at all? Were they unhelpful? Were they a hindrance? What kind of response did you get from those folks?
Well, the four members of Congress that we were engaged with, primarily it was then Senator Harry Reid, who was the Senate Majority Leader. But you also had Senator Stevens, a Republican Senator Inouye from Hawaii, a Democrat, and even former astronaut John Glenn. And later on, it turned out even we had the individual from Arizona, late Senator John McCain, also involved in this, and it was very helpful. These folks are heroes. In every case, these individuals were veterans themselves. They served their country honorably. In some cases, literally gave their arm for their country. Senator Stevens had his own UAP incident while he was a pilot in World War II and actually saw, at the time they called them Foo Fighters, and had an interaction with one of these things. These are very prominent individuals. They have incredible intellect, fair-minded, top secret security clearances. These aren't people that are prone to flights of fancy. So these were the sponsors of the program itself, right? So they were very helpful. and they were very helpful getting us additional funding and budget. The problem is that within here's the problem, the bureaucracy of the Department of Defense, after 2012, when the initial tranche of funding expired, another $10 million came to us. The problem is that once it came down to us, the wording in the language was a little bit nebulous. And so it talked about ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. And therefore, the pot of money, $10 million, was taken by another office within USDI. I won't mention the individual's name, but at some point that'll probably become public. And I couldn't do a damn thing, unfortunately, because I couldn't come out and say, hey, John, that money was intended for me because that's my office and we're looking at UFOs. I couldn't do that. And so later on, I had some conversations with some more senior people in USDI at the time. And when they finally realized what I was doing, they're like, oh, shoot, yeah, that's a problem. We probably should have known ahead of time. We probably could maybe get you the money that was supposed to come to you. But it was difficult. I couldn't, because there was a lot of transition in the Pentagon at the time. There were a lot of people that were flip-flopping and moving positions. Another individual who I respect tremendously was the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence at the time. His name was Jim Clapper. He was a former director of several defense agencies as well, and then left the USDI when I was part of ATIP to become the Director of National Intelligence. Obama had just come into office and selected him to be the new Director of National Intelligence. So my boss was gone, and we had new leadership at the time. At the time, it was Mike Vickers. He came in to be the Undersecretary. He brought in a whole bunch of people, and unfortunately, a lot of those folks were under IG investigation. So I didn't have the top cover. I didn't have the ability to brief these individuals, and so I had to wind up circumventing them and going around, if you will, kind of that little. Well, I don't want to say the vernacular. I was going to be disrespectful. I don't mean to be. That little enclave of individuals who was under investigation. I could not risk the national security of our program in the hands of people who I knew for a fact were under IG investigation.
Okay. We have a question from the chat I need to address. From Lisa Bowden. Lou, if UAPs are intelligent, do you think they will reveal themselves on their own?
Well, Lisa, thanks for the question. I think they already have. I think we're at the point where they've already revealed themselves. Look, people, when they say, well, are they going to come down and talk to us, right? Are they going to communicate? Well, let's break that down for a minute. What does communication mean? Well, the verbal communication, we're having communication right now. But if you and I, Lisa, were at the end of a hallway and I were to look at you and wave, I'm communicating with you. I'm communicating some sort of intent. As I said before, there's all sorts of ways to communicate. I communicate with my dogs, and my dogs every day communicate with me. They're not talking to me saying, hey, Dad, I'm hungry, give me some food. But they tell me when they're hungry. They tell me when they want to go to the bathroom. They tell me when they want to be pet. They tell me when they want a belly rub. So I would submit to you that the mere fact that they're here and showing up the way that they are definitely communicating with us. Maybe we don't understand yet precisely what they're trying to say or communicate, but we are under strong impression right now within the government that communication has already been established. Now, let me preface, because people are going to say that, oh, Lou's confirming that, Eisenhower, we had the secret agreement. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm simply saying is that there are ways to communicate intent. There's all sorts of ways, right? If I stick up my middle finger to you right now, I'm communicating an intent. If I go to you and I do this, right, a heart, or forgive me, the big sausage fingers, but if I do this, I'm communicating, an intent and expression. So I think we have to be careful when we say, is there going to be any effort in the future for them to communicate? Because I think they already have. I think we're beyond that.
Right. Tommy?
Very good. Let's take a step back, if you don't mind. You mentioned that one of the congressmen was actually a World War II, a person that participated in World War II as a pilot, and actually had an interaction with one of these, what they used to call Foo Fighters. We're also familiar with that phenomenon. So we're talking about a phenomenon that dates back decades upon decades. And it's just very frustrating as an American taxpayer that it's taken this long for the American government, frankly, to come out and not play us for a bunch of fools. At least give us something. At least acknowledge, that these things are in fact in the air. They are real, and that was something that we were very surprised by in the UAP report. So, I mean, do you have knowledge of other folks that during the World War II period that also had, encounters, if you will?
This effort goes way back, guys. This runs a lot deeper. I still have to be very careful. I said this before. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Hopefully, anybody who has seen me talk before realizes I always leave breadcrumbs. In some cases, giant loaves of bread. This is a topic that is going to take some time to untangle. There has been a deep history of not just the U.S. government, but other governments' involvement in this topic, and that that ball of yarn has to be untangled slowly and methodically. There's no shortcuts, and I've told people this before. Look, if you're itching for answers, then go get a hobby and come back in 5 years, and maybe there'll be a more significant update for you. But we've come a long way in the last 4 years. People just have to have patience. There's a lot at stake here. There's a lot of equity. This is a big conversation. Anybody who thinks, well, I just want the answer, I just need to know yes or no. Well, you're thinking myopically. You're precisely the reason why we haven't had this conversation yet, because it's far more complex. This is a conversation that affects all of humanity, our entire species. Whether you acknowledge it or not, it does, and it has for a long time. And there were decisions made by individuals, by organizations, institutions, and governments at the time that were probably believed to be in the best interest of the people. But interests of people change over time. Cultures change, likes and dislikes change, right? Music changes, right? So I think the time has come where we can have that honest conversation. But if anybody thinks that, it's just a simple question of, tell me the truth and I'll go on and I'll, go back to my daily routine. It's not as simple as that. I would encourage people to not think so myopically, because this is a very, very significant conversation we are embarking upon, and it will have long-term effects on humanity. I think mostly good, but maybe some bad.
Mm-hmm.
And if we do our due diligence and try to see ahead of time what can be impacted, I think that's smart. And I'm not trying to embarrass anybody. I don't want to go, see, government, you're bad. The government's not bad. The government is just as good or bad as you and me. And it's made of some fantastic individuals. And the job of government is to protect its citizens. So, therein lies the challenge. Who is making a decision? What is in the best interest of its citizens? And far too often we leave that in the hands of government. And far too often there are individuals in the government that really shouldn't have that responsibility. And so this is why we're in an attempt to try to democratize this conversation and get everybody involved, so we can all make that decision collectively, right? I don't want government or frankly you, Tommy, you, Tim, making a decision unilaterally that affects me and my family without my input, right? I don't think that makes sense. Nor would you want that to happen. Would you want me to make a decision that affects you guys without your input? And of course, your audience. So this is where we are. And of course, in the mix of this, you have these hucksters and fraudsters that have been part of this, ridiculous, sideshow we called ufology for a long time, where they've hijacked a very serious conversation and tried to own the narrative and take it away from you, take it from you and your audience and control and say, no, I'm the information keeper. You can only go to me. You can't talk to anybody else. I'm the one with all the answers. I mean, kind of honestly, cult-like, right? The opposite of democratizing the conversation. You're tyrannizing the conversation. You're a tyrant, making it tyranny. And I think as a tyrant, I think that's a mistake. And so, I'm not really concerned with that anymore. I've decided to lift and shift and focus my efforts back to where my real skills are. That's working diligently behind the scenes for honest disclosure and transparency into this conversation. And by the way, it's happening every single day. Every single day, we are making tremendous progress forward. And, I do my best to try to keep the people informed as much as possible. But, at some point too, I got to make sure I don't distract myself from what the real main mission is. Keeping people informed is part of the mission, but it's not the complete mission. And, that's probably why you see me lately kind of pulling back. This is really, I've got only a few more engagements left. As you know, I'm really not going to be involving much myself more in the public eye regarding this topic. I've become, I think, a little bit too much of a distraction. Unfortunately, people have looked at me as more important than the issue of transparency and disclosure, and that's it's a mistake. It's a mistake. That's not what we should be doing. We should be focusing on the topic. I'll tell you, you want to know one of the big concerns government used to have on this topic, and maybe to some degree they still do. For the first time, I think I may have watched it once before, I don't know, maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago. My wife sat me down to watch the movie Contact recently this week. And it's a movie with Jodie Foster. And again, as most of you know, I'm not a science fiction fan. I don't really follow science fiction or anything like that. But she said, look, there's something I want you to see. And so as we're watching this, we're watching the characters develop. And there's this point where Jodie Foster, I guess disclosure has now happened, right? People know that we are talking to some sort of advanced civilization in the Virga constellation. And so, big hi to Linda Thompson, by the way. And so there's a point there where she's coming back into one of the facilities, and outside is this absolute mob of people, from religious people, the end of the world is coming, to people looking up at the sky and say, we welcome our celestial brothers, to other people having a rock and roll and rave party, to neo-Nazis. It's like all of Fringe is represented in this one scene. And, to some degree, we have to be mindful of that. You watch the movie and you kind of laugh at it, but, we have to ask ourselves a hard question. We have to look in the mirror and say, well, hell, am I part of that? Am I one of those people that I've become so consumed with this topic that I can't even look at it objectively anymore because my narrative, my perspective is more important than anything else? And so it was interesting. I saw that and it really resonated. I said, wow, that's a real problem. It just happened 2 years ago, right? Look at the Storm Area 51. That just happened for real in real life. That's in Hollywood. That's real. People showed up and were really ready to storm Area 51 and put their lives on the line and potentially get shot and killed because someone made a joke on social media. Right. So we have a much bigger responsibility than that. We can't do that. We can't just to get out information. There's repercussions for everything. And I mean everything. And I think we have to look, we've come a long way in 4 years. And I think we have, because we have been pursuing this in the deliberate manner that we've been pursuing it. It hasn't been haphazard. It hasn't been one person come and say, I control the narrative and you all listen to me and I've been selected to represent everybody. Have the conversation. We're here because of the opposite, because we've had this democratization of this conversation. But when we do that, we have to hold ourselves accountable. And remember, we have a responsibility. If you really want the truth, then we got to be able to handle the truth. And you have to police ourselves to make sure that people who are in positions of authority don't get spooked and scared. Say, look how they're behaving. See, they can't handle the truth. They can't. We can't give them that excuse. So that's my 2 cents, maybe 3 cents.
Okay, I do have another comment for you from the chat room that I need to bring up. It's from a friend of mine by the name of Rodney from the Awakened show. Um,
He says that I've served in the Army at Fort Bliss, Texas, and have seen some strange things. Have you heard of any rumblings around that area?
Yes, yes. Oh, his name Rodney. Is that his name you said? I'm sorry, I don't see it
Rodney,
here.
yes.
So Rodney, yeah, we have. Now, if you've been to Fort Bliss before, you know that you have, El Paso, and then you have Juarez. And when you get up on the hills there in El Paso and you look down into Juarez, you can actually see a line where, because the type of incandescent light bulbs we use in the United States are slightly different than the light bulbs they use in Mexico. And so because of the amount of mercury in those incandescent light bulbs, you can see where Mexico ends and the U.S. begins just by the color of the lights you can see from the hilltop. It's really actually, it's quite beautiful and actually very interesting. There's a lot that happens at Fort Bliss, a lot. You have all sorts of military operations going on. You have DHS operations going on. So why am I saying this? Well, because we have to be careful. Yes, we have heard of and had reports of UAP activity in and around the Fort Bliss area. However, we also have to do our due diligence to make sure that we can deconflict what else is out there, right? Because you have DHS and you have U.S. Border Patrol, right? And you have ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and you have private pilots, right? And you have drones, you have commercial drones, you have Amazon, you have Fort Bliss, right? So there's a lot in the sky. This is part of the problem we're having now. And actually, it's a great question, great jumping off point there, Rodney, because one of the things we're doing now in the government is we've realized that we've got a problem called UAPs, and then we've got a problem called air trash and air junk. Stuff that's up in the sky that we don't know what it is, but still impacts what we call U.S. air domain awareness, which is, by the way, a responsibility we have. We have an obligation to know everything that's going on in our airspace. We do. And unfortunately, right now, we don't. So the big question is right now, within government channels, do we lump everything under air trash and then try to solve the problem of air trash and say, so we've solved the problem with UFOs? Or do we say, no, they're two different things. You have air trash, and then you have something that is a disruptive technology. And I don't mean disruptive in a bad way. I mean a beyond next generation technology, right? An advanced technology that has the capabilities to do things that we can't and interfere in our controlled U.S. airspace. Those are two, in my opinion, those are two separate things. They always have been and they always will be. The problem is to the layperson and to the government bureaucrat who may not realize UAP, what's just come across my UAP, what? All right, stick that over in that bin. Stick that in that trash pile over there we call air trash. Well, that's not the case. And so we're trying to convince people, look, be cognizant of the fact that, not everything in this, everything in the sky may be, something, but not everything is going to necessarily be air trash. And so that's where we are in this conversation right now, internally.
Well, it's very interesting that you would bring up the air trash message there. You keep hearing the naysayers talk about these videos, like the gimbal video, for instance, or talking about, that's just a Chinese drone. That's just, some kind of advanced technology from one of our adversaries. But I guess my thoughts on that are, if that's the case, if let's say the Chinese have come up with this brand new super technology that, that leaps and bounds above everybody else, they figured out field propulsion, they can propel a vehicle without belching out smoke and making noise, things like that. Plus they also have some sort of a grasp of control of gravity to a certain extent. Now, wouldn't we see that in their industrial sector? I mean, wouldn't they be cornering the market on anything and everything with having that kind of power source and that kind of capability?
Yeah. So let's deconstruct that for just a minute. Okay. First of all, you're telling me that a country, despite billions of dollars of our best intelligence, that there's been a country who's developed a capability that can fly at hypersonic velocities, conduct 180-degree turns, 300, 500, 1,000 G maneuvers, fly in space, water, and air, and by the way, doesn't use any type of form of lift or propulsion. Okay, and on top of that, you want me to buy the fact that now they've been able to do this for the last 70 years? Now, by the way, we have U.S. government reporting of these same Tic Tacs. I got some in my desk that talk about, instead of flying Tic Tacs, flying butane tanks, flying lozenges. I've got a drawing from 1986, before the Tic Tac event ever became even was known or had happened in 2004. This is going back to the 80s. People are drawing the same tic tac, doing the same thing with the same dimension. So you're telling me that the country, either Russia or China, because it really could be anybody else, right on the heels of World War II, right after we dropped the atomic bomb and we were just entering the jet age, we had barely broken the sound barrier. We hadn't been to space yet. That China, which by the way was in the middle of a famine, or Russia, who was still using horses and carts to pull ammunition from base to base on occasion, they had this technology, and they were flying it over the United States. Okay, so let's go down that logic trail for just a moment. Which let's just suspend reality, just presume that happened. In 70 years, that means the nation with the most both capable intelligence capability, despite all 18 agencies now, and our HUMINT and SIGINT and GEOINT and COMINT and ELINT and all these other ints and the billions of dollars we spend each year, we never saw a shred of it one time, an indicator. And yet they've been flying over our controlled U.S. airspace for the last 70 years. Well, if that's the case, then this would be the greatest intelligence failure this country has ever faced, eclipsing that by an order of magnitude of the events of 9/11. Because that means no matter what we do from here forward, we will never win a war. Now, would you think that Russia right now, who's losing their ass in the Ukraine, if they had this technology, they'd be using it? You're damn right they would, right? So that's just nonsense, and of course, what people forget is that you have the pilot testimony who were there. People like say, "Oh, that's the video. I'm just going to explain it away. It's the air clutter." Okay, first of all, it's backed up by radar, which you don't see. It's also backed up by the eyewitness testimony of the pilots who are just now coming out. Most of them you haven't heard from yet, who are telling you they've come up close and personal. By the way, in one of them, you hear the audio, which, by the way, there's other information out there, where there's a whole fleet of them, right? It's not just the gimbal. There's a whole fleet of these things, and they're moving against the wind and they're flying in formation. So, I appreciate healthy skepticism. What I don't appreciate are skeptics, people who are skeptics because that is their nature to just poo-poo everything. Even in the light of overwhelming evidence, they are still skeptics. I think that's a problem. Those are people that are just as bad as the true believers, that no matter what they see, it's always a UFO. And to the skeptic, no matter what they see, it will never be a UFO. Both are flawed perspectives. We need to be fair and objective and be able to look at things objectively. And that's my problem with the skeptics. I don't mind the naysayer. I really don't. I don't mind healthy skepticism because, forgive me, in my line of work, we call it alternative analysis. And I think alternative analysis is important. You don't want everybody just nodding their head saying, "Ooh, yes, UFO," because, there's a lot of things. I give a briefing where I had a guy who was dead to rights, 110% sure that he saw a UFO on a U.S. military base, a black UFO hovering. He even sent a picture and a video of it. And so we had it analyzed. And by the way, had we not had it analyzed and gotten out to the public, for the next 30 years, I guarantee people would have said, "There's a black UFO flying over that military base, and here's a picture. This is a clear picture of it." Well, it turns out it wasn't a UFO. Actually, we did the analysis, and it turned out to be. I can give you this presentation at some point in the future, but it wound up being an old Army tent. In fact, I don't know if I can share a screen. I can show it to you right now, real quick. But
sure, you can.
Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, give me 1 second here, folks. Maybe your audience will have a little more patience with me when I do this. I'm going to try something here. Again, forgive me. Let's do this, and then I'm going to share my screen in a second. Let me pull up the portion. I don't want to waste your time with a bunch of other stuff that we've been giving, so I'm just going to give you this piece here. And of course, my computer is very slow, so forgive me. And so in the meantime, you guys know any good jokes while I pull this up?
I was just going to respond to the chat real quick. Another thing about if this were a Chinese or Russian or whatever, some other adversarial's equipment, something in their inventory, then why are they so dead on, actually stealing our secrets? What do they need our secrets if they have technology like that? You hear about this all the time.
Right.
The Chinese are trying to break into Northrop or whatever, things of that nature. And it's like if they had something this advanced, they wouldn't be concerned about our stealth technology, things like that. They'd have something already better in their inventory.
Let's see if this works, guys.
Okay.
Okay.
If you use the share button on the bottom there.
That doesn't seem to work. Okay, let's try this. Let's see. No, that's not going to work either. Well, shoot, guys. For some reason, it doesn't want to allow me to share my. So I go share screen, and I go, shows share screen, and then
you go to your
entire
video
screen,
file.
share. There we go. Let's see if this works. All right, is it working for you guys? Can you see my?
No.
Guys, no. You're talking. I can't hear you. I'm going to take that as a
there's.
Can't see this right here. Okay, so let me get this and see if I can hear you guys. Forgive me. I'm just screen. See if I can guys. Let's try this. I can't hear.
Can you hear us?
You're sort of breaking up on your end.
Let me for a second jump right back on.
Sure.
Okay, go right ahead. Lou will be back shortly. He's got to jump out and jump back on. So please hang around. We'll have him right back. Connor and Evan, thank you for the $9.99. If I can, I'll ask you about the flyby video. And we're probably going to ask him about that 23-minute video as well. So here he is again. Welcome back.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. Well, lesson to myself. I won't do that again. I had a neat presentation. I was just going to show you some of the analytics we did, but I can save that for another time. And we can. So I haven't done it before on SteamYard yet, so forgive me. I can do it pretty well on Zoom, but I guess I was getting kind of glitchy with this.
Okay. We do have a question from the chat room that I have to address because several people are asking it. I don't know if you're familiar with the flyby video of a disc that's flying by the wing of a plane. Mm-hmm. They want to know, is it your belief that the video is authentic? Do you believe that this craft behaves similarly to the 23-minute video?
So I can't comment on the veracity or authenticity of the video. Look, it wasn't available for us at ATIP, and it's not a video that we are currently addressing within the group of people that I work with. I am aware of it. I've seen it. It looks interesting. It does not at all comport to the maneuver characteristics that are associated with the 23-minute video. Completely different thing. It's that flyby video is certainly, again, interesting to look at, but I don't know the provenance of it. I don't know how it came to be. I don't know who recorded it. And so therefore it's really tough. And at the end of the day, and I've said this before, Tim and Tommy, it doesn't matter what I believe. It matters what the facts suggest and the data suggests. So forgive me for not necessarily commenting on it, but it wouldn't serve a purpose because right now it's an uninformed guess, and I'm not sure how helpful that would be to anybody because at the end of the day, a guess is 50-50, right? So I just I don't know.
Right.
Well, if we could just to real quick address the UAP report itself. Now, with the 9 pages that we received as the public, something that Tim and I refer to as an 8th grade book report, B+ work at best. That being said, the classified version and all of the other things that you've actually witnessed that go along with that, do you suspect that would shock the American public or most people in the American public?
Well, those 70 some pages helped inform the document. There's annexes and enclosures to that, and people say, "Oh, the thing was only 6 pages." Look, I don't know what to tell you. I know people believe in FOIA, and FOIA is helpful sometimes, but FOIA isn't everything. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't get put down in an email that you're never going to be able to FOIA. Look, we have an entire intelligence apparatus called human intelligence, humans, that is dedicated to stuff that's not in writing. It's human to human interaction, right? How many times you have a conversation with your spouse or a loved one and don't write an email about it? Well, a hell of a lot, right? So, I respect the FOIA process. It can be very helpful, but it's not the end all be all by any stretch. There's a large portion, majority of stuff that I worked on that will never be in FOIA. In fact, it was FOIA exempt. And so as far as the remaining pages that are classified, I can't discuss those. I don't have the ability to. At some point, if they get downgraded, that'd be great, but it's not up to me. I don't know why people get wrapped around the axle, because they'll say, well, they reported it's only, whatever pages, 7, 8 pages. Well, it's not. And every time I've had this conversation, I've always been proven right. I've never misled anybody. And so, at some point, people are going to have to kind of wake up and realize that FOIA isn't everything. I'm sorry, it's just not. And
Right.
either you're good with it or you're not. But that's the reality, and that's why it's important that we understand that unclassified report was constructed based upon classified information. I mean, it even says it. So I don't know why it's a surprise that the original report was much longer, because it is. A lot of enclosures in there is what built that document. And by the way, there's going to be more of these reports coming out. So I think it's a good thing. I think people say, well, the report was underwhelming. I said, nope, I think it did exactly what it needed to do. It said that out of 144 cases, 143 remain unsolved. So we've got a problem. Oh, by the way, this could be something else, other category, which, by the way, looks like is quite possible. So, for the first step of an unclassified U.S. government report on UAPs, I think it did exactly what it needed to do. And all it did was get Congress even more engaged and say, okay, so you're telling us you don't know what these are. Well, guess what? Figure it out. And so,
Mhm.
I think it did exactly what it's supposed to do. That's my opinion, anyways.
Very good.
Yeah. Um, I was going to ask you something here in regards to the permanent UAP research group that was recently set up within the US government. Do you think that they will eventually release the remaining 64 pages of the classified UFO report, along with any data, 4K video footage, and other information to the public, specifically uh, within a reasonable amount of time?
I'm optimistic. I sure hope so. I think people in Congress, that's why they required an unclassified report that's due. I think on an annual basis. I think that's smart. But look, this isn't a one-trick pony, guys. Um,
Right.
Congress isn't done. Okay, you heard that first from me. I'm not going to go into any more detail. But if you think Congress this is one and done, you're mistaken. Like I said, we're not done. We're not through yet with this conversation. You can see the headlines from this week alone that things were put into motion some time ago. Again, I don't talk about it, but you're now seeing that, and I've left hints all along the way. And if you think Congress is going to leave this alone, whoever thinks that is sadly mistaken. They are more energized now than ever. You have people like Congressman Tim Burchett and Congressman Gallegos, opposite sides of the aisle, Senators Marco Rubio and Senator Gillibrand, again, opposite sides of the aisle, coming together on this and saying, wait a minute now, DOD, wait a minute, Intel community. We're seeing a lot of stuff up here. You can't give us answers to these, and that doesn't look like a 737. So you better figure this out. And you better figure out a way to have a conversation with the American people, because we, Congress, is being held accountable to the American people, to our constituents. So you damn well better believe we're gonna be talking to our constituents.
Right, I saw the video with Tim Burchett, and he hit the nail right on the head. He was very engaging, and he got his point across. I find him to be very important in this discussion.
Guys, if you ever get a chance to meet him, and this goes for your audience, he's truly an incredible human being. This is a salt of the earth kind of guy. I don't want to say too much. I don't know how much he keeps private, but this is a guy who grew up blue collar. He was a welder, had a trailer shop. He's a gearhead like me, and is also, by the way, a damn fine statesman. And he really represents his constituents. So one thing he'll tell you is like, look, man, my job is to support and defend my constituents. Period. Full stop. And whatever their interest is, that's my interest. They put me here in Congress to represent them, and I'll be damned if that's not what I'm going to do. He's a good man. We need more. Honestly, we need more people like him in Congress. If you ask me, he's exactly what a representative should be. Unfortunately, it's not as common as you might think, but
Right.
he's a good individual, great individual, in fact.
Tommy?
Well, there's so many people that are asking questions now that would never have asked the questions before the UAP report. That's true. A lot of more people are energized. To your point, they're very interested in this subject. And I imagine that Congress is feeling quite a bit of heat. There's certain congressional members out there that their people are saying, look, we want more. We understand what you've told us. We understand what you've given us. We understand what we've seen, but we want more details at this point. And I'm
Tommy,
hoping
there's Congress people in confidence that will tell you, they haven't gone public, they've had their own UFO encounters.
Mhm.
They're like, look, I saw one fishing with my dad. We were in a pond. I was 10 years old. My dad was fishing, and we both saw the thing come out of the water. I mean,
wow.
these are representatives, man. This is not just, okay, well, let's go ahead and entertain the masses. That's not what's going on here.
Good. That's
Right.
good.
That's
Because
good.
it's about time that happened too. That no more of this business of shoving it off as swamp gas or whatever. People know better than that. People aren't stupid. When someone sees it, and believe me, when you have a close encounter with this type of technology, it's not Chinese, it's not Russian, it's not anything like that. It's something completely different. And I'm glad that there are people that are elected officials out there in Congress that have actually had these experiences, because they know that they're real as well. And to me, and I like to, I'm going to sort of quote you. I've seen you say this a few times, or something to this effect. It's no longer a matter of if these things are real. They're absolutely real, and anybody that's actually denying that is simply in denial of the fact that these things are out there and they're real. I mean, when the United States government actually comes out there and all but admits it, frankly did admit it, that these things are basically out there. We don't know what they are. We don't know where they're from, but these things are real. They're of substance. But that's a big step, considering that we've been shut down for the last 60 or 70 years. Every single time someone's asked.
You're absolutely right, but let me go one step further here. What I'm going to say is probably going to be very controversial, and probably, I suspect, if not you, Tommy, maybe you, Tim, will disagree with what I'm about to say. But let me say this with all due respect and deference. The gatekeepers of this information, the 4-H, okay, we must show some reservation. Okay, we cannot be out for blood. I know people say, well, we've been had this for 70 years. We hold people accountable. We need to put them in jail. And we need. Look, I get it, guys. I really do. But there's some people there that decisions were made that they're not bad people. They made decisions at the time because they felt in their heart of hearts it was in the best interest of the American people. These people, some of them are true patriots, and it's a heavy burden that they had to carry and still carry. And so this is why I have recommended some sort of amnesty effort where we say, look, folks, no hard feelings, right? Come out of the cold, come under the umbrella, come under the tent, have some hot tea, and let's talk, right? And let's finally get under the tent all the information where it belongs. In the meantime, we're going to continue to protect the information commensurate to the level that it deserves. We're going to protect you for protecting this information. But we are not the same country where we were even 10 years ago, let alone 20, 30, 40 years ago. And so we cannot be out for blood. We cannot. We have to show some self-control, reservation. And I know it's hard people to get this, wrap their hands around this and say, well, there's no way anybody can excuse running extra governmental efforts, outside the Constitution on this topic. Look, I don't disagree, but until 4 months ago, I was given an explanation that actually I respected, I understood. Again, I don't let me qualify. I don't agree with it, but I can now at least understand why somebody would have kept this information so secret for so long, to include not even talking to a president at times. And I would just tell people, if I could, remind people that these are other human beings that really, a lot of them were really trying to do the right thing. Some of them weren't. Gotcha. And for those, they're going to be held accountable. Put them in front of a spotlight and hang them by their toes, right? But there are a lot of them there that really were doing what they thought was their patriotic duty. And I want to make sure that we make it clear that we can't make this a witch hunt. We can, as much as we want to, as much as we're pissed off and frustrated. That's not the answer. The answer is going to be have to be a more gentle approach. We're going to have to, rather than raise a fist, we're going to have to extend a hand, a handshake. And I know that's tough, but I'll just offer that as
that's fair.
My perspective.
Yes. We agree. All these people that are out there that have had encounters all throughout their lives, no matter whether it's going back 70 years or more, we respect them and we respect their stories. And even though we may disagree at times with their decision making, we understand why. When the UFO report came out this last year, I almost saw Project Sign's estimate of the situation again. That's pretty much what I saw. And I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, they're using the same playbook. And I told that to Tommy. And we were talking about that. And it's like,
well, they tried. Some of them tried. You're right, but we're making sure that doesn't happen.
Good.
That's all I can say about that.
The one thing I want you to make clear to the people in the chat room is that we've already had disclosure, and now we're working on transparency. And
yeah, correct. Yeah, disclosure has already happened. Look, we've had two former directors of CIA. You have two former presidents of the United States of America. You have a current director of national intelligence and a current deputy secretary of defense. And now a current director, NASA administrator, and also, by the way, Congress telling you it's real. I don't know what else you want. That's disclosure. It may not look and feel the way you think. It's not a Hollywood movie. You're not going to get someone standing up at a podium and addressing the world. That address has already been made. You don't have to make it. Now let's move on. Let's move to transparency. Other countries have come up with, Japan entering into a bilateral information sharing agreement with the United States for sole purposes of sharing UFO information.
Wow.
It's occurred, guys. That doesn't happen unless you have disclosure. So we're there. We have disclosure. Now what we need is transparency, and what we need is understanding. And that's kind of where we are right now in the playbook.
We try to do that here on the channel. We try to bring people on that want to tell their stories, okay? And we try to be as transparent with them as possible and allow them to tell what they know from their own point of view. And then we let everybody in the chat room and participants online make up their own minds. But we also remind people that they have to look at the research. They have to justify and account for what is being said through actual findings Otherwise, it's just a story.
Right. And you know, it's a shame because a lot of people get very frustrated, right? Well, I'm telling you, I'm pouring out my heart to you, I'm giving you my story, it happened, it's real. Well, okay, but still, you know, it's like anything else. We need to have data. It's not just a perspective. You know, eyewitness testimony is helpful, but at the end of the day, what made this topic so compelling the last 3 years, it wasn't because some pilots saw something, it's because we had video and we had radar and we had the testimony, right? So, and what I want to say is I'm not diminishing anybody who's had a personal experience at all. I'm not saying that's not important. It is important, but also recognize that it's you know, try to approach this from a well, try to approach it from an investigative perspective, right? You know, try to ask yourself all the five basic interrogatives: who, what, when, where,
Mhm.
how, and then of course why, right? Um, and try to, you know, look at things that way if possible. You know, we're just now getting into the topic of biological effects.
Mhm.
That's a big deal. I mean, that's a big deal. I couldn't talk about that for a long time. Uh, I now can to some degree, not a lot, but some. Uh, and it's coming out to light of what we did. It's coming to people are beginning to see. Wow, wow, shit! You guys actually looked at that? Whoa, whoa! You got a report? Whoa, wait, a classified report and an unclassified report that went to DIA? What? You're kidding me? No, I'm not. And there's other ones. You know, these are there are pilots, there are individuals, special operators, and ground guys and gals who may have come up a little too close and personal to some of this technology and have suffered the medical consequences because of it. And we owe these people an answer. We need to understand what we're dealing with, and it's not necessarily a you know there's a difference between a biological threat versus a hostile intent. And I've said this before many times. Look, I'm a gearhead. But if I put my, you know, if I open up the car hood and the engine's off, yeah, there's no real threat there. But if I got the car on and the fan blade's turning and I got, you know, I got belts moving around and I stick my hand in there, well, hey, I could get hurt, right? That's just a consequence of the technology. And so the same thing holds true with this. We just got to be mindful that we're dealing with an advanced technology we don't fully understand. And so, you know, we gotta figure it out. So hopefully people don't get more people don't get hurt.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, absolutely. People have to have the knowledge about that, and that's another thing that I think is important. You know, to almost to warn people at this point because we are seeing some effects of you know some physical effects on people that have actually had close encounters, and we're not just talking about abductees. We're talking about people that have just been in the middle of the road and you know
Guys,
they had
wait
an
till James
experience.
Fox comes out with his next movie. I mean, brace yourself. It's
Really,
it's 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 gonna shake you. Yeah, it's you know, it, it's gonna shake you. He's done a tremendous job. If you know who James Fox is, he
Yes.
did the recent movie The Phenomenon.
yep.
Well, he's got another one coming out. He spent a lot of time in certain country collecting data, very compelling data, eyewitness testimony, military intelligence, and whatnot. Um, you know, wait till that comes out.
Hmm. Outstanding. Can't wait.
That'd be awesome.
Well, speaking in terms of you know, let's say pilots and other military professionals that have actually had these experiences, had these close encounters, if you will, um, would you say that these people are affected on a personal level after experiencing something like that?
Well, sure, right? I mean, look at in my world, right? Of PTSD, how many soldiers come back from a combat theater affected by it? I mean, I think we're all affected by it to some degree. Some are affected more than others, and some are affected in different ways. PTSD has many different forms. In some cases, it's anxiety. In some cases, it's fear. In some cases, it's anger, right? And so this is no different. You know, there are some very specific morphologies that we can look and we can quantify and qualify and say, yes, this is a result of some sort of potential directed energy. And then there's other that's information and data that's a little bit more subjective. You know, there was an individual in the major media, mainstream media this week that covered cattle mutilations. Right? Well, that's a biological effect. It's not a human effect, but it's certainly a biological effect,
Sure.
right? You know, so potentially, we caveat that potentially. So I think we're beginning to finally. This topic is finally being placed on the mantle in which it deserves to be placed upon and studied and looked at. We now have academic institutions like the Galileo Project. And by the way, if you get a chance to see who Avi Loeb has managed to get on this team, it's unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable. You have organizations within Stanford doing the same, and other organizations and other institutions. I was supposed to do a talk. Unfortunately, I missed it, and I feel terrible. So I'm doing it next week with a university with their students to have a conversation about this. And I just came back. I won't say where, but I just came back from Washington D.C. Briefing some graduate level students at an extremely prestigious institution. Chris Mellon and I had the privilege and honor of giving a presentation. It's happening. We're making incremental progress every single day on this topic. And what we need to do is we need to do a better job that when someone first hears about this topic for the first time and take it seriously, says, "Oh, I want to see what's going on," and they get on UFO Twitter, it's not a mosh pit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone's got to come in and say, hey, Jane, hey, Joe, listen, you're just starting off. Let me make some suggestions on maybe where you want to start your quest, because ultimately you're going to have to do a lot of the research yourself, but here are some good places to look at. These are some of the people to stay away from. These are some of the sites that you probably want to you can get good information from. These are the ones that are a little bit more shady, maybe, scrupulous.
I see.
That's what we need to do. And we need to make sure that we can treat each other with dignity and respect when we're having this conversation, and not always try to hijack the conversation. I know it's emotional for a lot of people. I know people want to know the truth. Hell, I want to know the truth, but we have to do this the right way. And I would just caution anybody out there. We have to be careful, because there's a lot of new people that are going to be coming into this topic, a lot, and
Really?
and we have a higher responsibility now more than ever to treat this topic with the respect that it deserves, and not get sucked into the vortex of the crazy babble and other things that occur in the UFO, UAP, ufology, if you will.
I see.
That'd be my suggestion.
Okay, I have a question for you, Lou.
Yes, sir.
With NASA sending information about Earth's location, the human population and its resources into space, do you suspect this might be a bad idea?
Well, there's two arguments to that. Certainly I tend to get paid to be paranoid, so I don't necessarily ever want to advertise my location unless I have a proper way to defend myself. But then again, if no one knows where you're at, then you're never going to evolve, right? So some will argue that a hostile species out there, if they hear us through technosignatures over the last 100 years of beaming signals through TV and radio, that we are giving away our location, and an advanced species can come in here and wipe us out. But there's another theory that says that violent species like that usually don't last very long. They tend to burn themselves out. And so the likelihood of a super advanced species being violent and getting that far ahead in advancement is not likely. And so therefore, statistically, it is more likely that whoever or whatever is that advanced is probably going to be more benign or neutral than it is necessarily hostile. The answer is I don't know. Both theories, they're theories, right?
Right.
Both are interesting. Both could be true, believe it or not, at the same time. So just great question, though.
I have a question from the chat room. It's from Connor and Evan, and they're asking, Lou, you said that humanity will have a somber reaction when we find out the full truth. How will we feel after finishing your book, and does somber equal sad and gloomy?
No, somber isn't sad or gloomy. Somber is serious. Somber is a tugging on the back of your shirt. and stopping you from falling off of a cliff. Whoa, holy crap, that was a cliff. Whew, thank you. You know, somber is standing up and singing the national anthem at a sports event. It's prideful, but it's somber. It means people have sacrificed and died for that privilege, right? So I think when I say somber, I mean it quite literally. And it's up for interpretation for some people, because some people, don't. I mean, some people don't really care about this topic, and it won't have any effect on them because they don't. Just like the same people who, when they sing the national anthem, don't feel that sense of pride. It's just people are different, unfortunately, and that's okay. I mean, it's people are entitled. That's what makes this country so great, because people are entitled to not care if they really don't want to. If you want to go watch the Kardashians or Monday Night Football, then good. Doesn't make you a bad person. This topic isn't necessarily a topic that look. There's people who can't even comprehend the topic. I remember giving a briefing. No offense to the individual if he's listening, but I gave a briefing to a very, very senior DoD official, like one of the very top. And I remember him after an hour and a half giving the briefing, showing the videos, not those other videos, classified videos, pictures and reports, and some of the key reports that came in. He looked at me with a total blank stare and he said, "So Lou, how are those Miami Hurricanes doing this season?"
Wow.
And
Wow.
he just couldn't do it. And then I got another call from the secretary's office. "Hey, listen, you may probably not want to brief him again. You need to brief this other person. He can't really absorb it."
Grasp the concept of it.
Yeah, I mean, again, does it make him a bad person? No, he was actually a pretty damn good executive for the Department of Defense. But this topic just he couldn't process it.
It's beyond him.
And yeah, and it's going to be on a lot of people. Again, doesn't make him bad, and we have to show some restraint. We can't be frustrated by that. To you, it might be almost unbelievable. How can you not consider this topic so serious? I mean, certainly for me, I've given up almost everything to pursue it. But I also respect the fact that some people, it's just not their thing. They'd rather, like I said, watch the Kardashians and watch Monday Night Football and live blissfully unaware, because it doesn't. Look, this topic is something we are a species that likes to live in neat little boxes. Take a look at any city, modern city, and you see it's the streets and avenues are arranged in nice, neat little grid patterns, 90-degree grid patterns, right? North and south, east and west. And we do that for ease of navigation, right? We have rules on the street. We have speed limits. We have all these things that we look at, signs, right, everywhere to tell us what to do, and in some cases, what to think, right? We are a species that likes boundaries. We like a species, in some cases, that's probably why we have organized religion and organized governments and institutions, because we like limited. Look, if you tell somebody, look, there's no such thing as up or down. You're sitting on a ball, and chances are you're probably standing upside down on this ball as it's hurtling through space. It's just gravity sucking you here. And there is no such thing as being here tomorrow, because the Earth is spinning around the sun, which is moving around the galaxy at thousands and thousands of miles an hour. You'll never be in the same place again in your life, ever. In fact, ever for the duration of the universe. Nothing is static. Everything is moving. There is no here. The notion of here isn't even real. That's a concept that is very disturbing for people, because they're like, no, I'm here. I'm in my house right now. I'm in my living room. I'm in my little city, and I'm going to go to the grocery store and get my things. Well, okay, that's kind of an illusion, because again, nothing is static. Everything is changing around you right now. You are changing yourself, and that's disturbing for a lot of people. When you realize, just take a look at it. Tell people, you want to know where we are. Take a look at Carl Sagan's the famous picture titled by Carl Sagan, "The Pale Blue Dot." And what you'll see is this black screen, and in the very middle of that screen, this little tiny, maybe 4 pixels wide, a little blue dot. That's Earth. Everything you've ever learned, everything you heard or read about, every person, every human being, every fraction of history that has ever been known ever to our species occur on that tiny little dot in the vastness of the universe. um, there's a whole lot more to the universe than that little blue
Sure.
dot. And
Sure.
so that not everybody is really, prepared or willing to have that conversation yet. Because once you do, you realize that, then you have to start questioning everything else, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so now, is my religion valid? Right? Is my culture valid? Is the way I was raised valid? Did mommy and daddy teach me the right things? Right? Is my government valid? And is it correct? And is it right? And is it just? Right? Does it have the interests of the American people at its heart? Do laws and rules really need what they need? Right? Or are they just there as control measures? And again, I don't want to get conspiratorial because that's not my intent. I'm just simply drawing, comparing and contrasting for some people. When you go down that rabbit hole of, oh my God, UAPs, UFOs are real, the natural cascade begins and people start to question everything. And so that's very uncomfortable for a lot of people. Um, I don't think questioning is bad. And I don't think at the end of the day, if you were to once you get engaged in this topic enough and you realize what's going, to some degree, what's going on, I don't think it necessarily it diminishes anyone's personal values. I don't think it diminishes religion at all, organized religion or spirituality. I don't think it diminishes the need for governance and government. I don't think it diminishes anything. But you have to go down that rabbit hole. Otherwise, you're gonna you're gonna have these questions. So, anyways, there you go. But again, I'd say my 2 cents, but probably more my nickel worth.
No, absolutely. In fact, I agree with you. But then again, I also look at this from the perspective of our species and science and things of that nature. And will the entirety of humanity ever be ready for some sort of a full disclosure type of event or whatever? And to me, I think most people could probably handle the fact that we are not alone in the universe. We are not the top of the food chain. Things of that nature. I also think that there are people, and I think we've seen that in recent times, that are going to have some serious issues with that. But I mean, at some point, I guess my own opinion, this is one person's opinion, but at some point we have to look at this as a whole. Is this going to be better for our species if we talk about this, if we actually bring this subject to light and the fact that we're not alone, or is Darwin just another clever bumper sticker?
Right.
And
well, that's a great point, Tommy. Look, and the question of whether we're ready or capable are two different things. Are we ever really ready for anything? Probably not. Am I ready for marriage? Am I ready to pay my taxes? Am I ready for that promotion? Well, I don't know, but am I capable of doing it? Yeah. Am I ready to hear the bad news from my doctor that maybe I have cancer? Am I ready to hear that, my son or daughter isn't happy with the way they're raised? Right? Am I ready to hear from my partner? Maybe I wasn't the best husband or father. Right? No, we're never ready for that. But in order to evolve and become better, we have to hear it.
Mhm.
And I don't think it's not a matter of being ready as a society. I think the species is very resilient. I think that is the definition of adaptation. If we want to evolve and adapt and ultimately overcome, we have to be accepting of new paradigms, of new
Mhm.
realities, and we shouldn't necessarily fear them. Again, this goes back to us living in our nice, neat little boxes where we like everything orderly and everything predictable, but life really isn't predictable. It's an illusion. We've told that lie to ourselves, but it is not predictable at all. In fact, our part of the solar system right now, the little solar system, the sun and the planets, are heading into an interesting part of the Milky Way galaxy. It's to one of, in fact, if you look at the background of your screen right now that you have for your audience, you see these beautiful Magellanic clouds in the background. Well, that's a lot of dust. That's a lot of matter. That's a lot of stuff that's making up those clouds. And we are at a point where we are heading into one of those bands. All havoc could break loose at any minute, any time. You could have an existential issue where now all of a sudden the entire planet is now under threat of being vaporized, right? And now people don't like to think about that, but this is reality, and I think again, I'm saying this not because I want to scare people, because that's not my intent. What I'm saying is that life is unpredictable. So let's at least have the conversation so we can be prepared. I think we can all agree no one wants to be surprised. Surprises
Right.
only work for holidays, holidays like Christmas and Hanukkah and birthdays, right? But other than that, we don't really like surprises, right?
That's
Right.
right.
You had a baby, surprise! Well, not really, right?
Yeah,
It's
you had
Right.
not,
9 months to figure that out. Sure.
yeah, right, exactly, right.
Hmm.
So,
Yep.
anyways, yeah, that's I agree with you, Tommy.
Hey, Lou, I've got to ask you this question because it was a
Sure.
super chat. Can you have Tim ask my super chat question about Harry Reid being fired? I imagine Lou would like to comment on that.
Yeah, first of all, it's not Harry Reid. Harry Reid, unfortunately, passed away. He's an
Right.
incredible human being, Senator Harry Reid. I think the individual is referring to Gary Reid. Gary Reid
Yes.
was my supervisor. Out of respect for him and his privacy, I never mentioned his name. Obviously, there were some significant issues with him. This is a person who made my life miserable for 4 years, who, in my opinion, abused his power to seek retribution against me because I did not read him into the program. This is a person who tried to impugn and destroy my reputation and my credibility, to the point where even telling false information to the public affairs officer in the DoD, the PAO officer. And so I've had to deal with that behavior. Furthermore, this is an individual who tried to open an investigation against me, involving an unauthorized disclosure, when it turns out he himself was found guilty in IG report of actually committing the very thing he tried to accuse me of, and that is using his computer to provide controlled unclassified information, instead of a U.S. government computer. So I'm a little sore. It greatly impacted my family and my way of life. He tried to come after my security clearance. Um, you know, I feel aggrieved. I take great offense to it. But at the same time, am I going to dwell on it? No. The system did exactly what it needs to do. I told everybody when I filed my AG complaint that people will be held accountable. And you are now seeing that. And by the way, for the record, I'm not done. Okay, so if you think Gary Reid is the only one, no, he's not. Hopefully, he's now in a situation. I wish no ill will on him. I hope he finds his peace and whatever it is that he's looking for. But he does not need to be in that position that he was in. He hurt a lot of people. A lot of people. There's a lot of silent voices that weren't heard, and unfortunately it took me and other people to file IG complaints, with a lot of specificity, in order to remove somebody who wasn't good for the system, who wasn't interested in transparency, was interested more in obfuscation and deception. And so you know let that be a lesson.
I guess I have a couple of questions that are really short. I wanted to ask you, how has being in the public eye affected you and your family?
Ooh, wow.
Great
Well, I
question.
live in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, because of it. Look, I'm not a Hollywood guy. I lived in California for a little bit, for job or employment reasons, for job reasons. But I don't like the limelight. I as I said before, it's one of my last interviews I'm going to do for quite some time, just because I'm a private person. I don't relish and seek the attention. I'm a creature of the shadows. In fact, as a in my former position, my former job, that was a matter of survival. You don't want people to know who you are and what your name is and where you live. There's a reason why my wife and I live in the middle of nowhere. I've got 4 German shepherds. I've got property on the highest, part of the town here, the county. Um, I love my privacy. Um, I Unfortunately, though, that my desire for privacy and anonymity does not go well or hand in hand with transparency and disclosure. So it's been very tough. I can tell you, My kids have bared a lot of brunt of this. My wife has paid a dear price for this. She gave up an entire career, very successful career as a very senior person working for the state of Maryland. I gave up a career to do this. There was a time where we were living in a trailer for almost 2 years. Rat infested under a what looked like an airplane hangar. Because I made the decision to do this, and it was tough. And was it fair to my wife and kids? Hell no, it wasn't fair to them. Did they support me? Yes, because they love me, and they believe in me. And it's tough when you have to do something that you believe in, and it's going to be at the expense of your loved ones. Because the greatest accomplishment and achievement of my life are my 2 children, and been married a long time, almost 30 years. We've been through a lot together, and I've asked that woman to endure a lot. We've lived in third world countries. We've been on terrorist kill lists. We've been narco traffickers were coming after us. But this was probably the toughest, because I can't, at least with the bad guys, I can defend myself. But here, where honor and dignity mean everything in your line of work, working national security, when you're constantly being attacked and you can't fight back, you can't, and you know the truth, it, and your colleagues know the truth, right? People know, people in the right position know damn well who I am. I still have my security clearance. I mean, that should tell you something, right? People say, well, in order to have a security clearance, you have to be employed in some capacity. Yeah, you're right. So, it's tough. It's been really tough. But I'm very blessed too. I'm very, very lucky. I had the best family anybody could ask for. I won the lottery 1 million times over. There's nothing that I could ask for in my life right now. If I were to die tomorrow, I would die a very content man, knowing that I have the absolute best family anybody could ever have, bar none. Am I deserving of? Hell no. I put my family through hell, and I wish I didn't have to. But also, I don't think my wife and my kids would respect me either. If my wife knew the kind of man I was when she met me and she married me. And to me, principles, you live and die with those principles. Mm-hmm. Because the same principles are the ones that when you hear something in the middle of the night making noise, I'm the first one clearing the house, mm-hmm. Because that's what you do. At least that's what I do. So. Mm-hmm.
Well, Lou, I tell you that's fantastic. And I want to personally thank you. And I'm sure Tim feels the same way, our audience. It took a lot of guts for you to come out and really disclose what you've disclosed here, talked about the things, discussed the things that you actually discussed. We really appreciate that.
Yes.
We just wish there were so many more men of your character out there, sir. And I salute you and thank you.
Well, Tom, thank you. I appreciate it. But again, undeserving. Look, you guys are the ones that are making it happen. I'm just a voice. You guys, with the help of you and your audience, we're an army, right? And that's what makes it so effective. It's not LUE ELIZONDO. It's all of us standing shoulder to shoulder, taking the hill together. And what a hill we have taken.
Right.
That's right. Absolutely.
And we hope to continue that work, even though you're going behind the scenes. We're going to be looking for you in the future. We really are.
Tim, I'll leave enough breadcrumbs. Don't worry. I
okay.
think people will be. I think it'll be really clear. I might not be as visible, but I think people will, if they look hard enough, they'll always know where I
am. Fantastic.
One last question. We wanted to know about your book. I know you've completed it, but when is it coming out?
So I'm still working on it. I've put a lot of time and effort into it. It has been, it's actually kind of a monumental effort. And I'll tell you, you always have to weigh, right? How much can you cram into a book? Because you put your heart and soul into it, right? It's your life, and it's going to represent you. In the absence of a voice, that is your voice. And you always have to decide, okay, how much do I leave in and how much do I have to take out? Because ultimately, you're limited in a book. You really are. Those are publisher decisions. And so it's a bit of a balance. It's coming along quite nicely. I think probably if everything goes well, hopefully by the end of this year, but I can't say for sure because there's some things that have to be done beforehand that are not up to me in this process. But I think it'll be very informative.
Excellent. We can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I want to have a signed copy. I tell you that right now. Yes.
Tim, you have my word. You will absolutely have a signed copy. No worries.
Outstanding.
In fact, what we'll do is
very
when it comes out, I'll give you guys a one-on-one interview if you want, and we can walk through any questions you have on it. We can address them.
We'd love
Cool.
to. Thank
Sounds
you.
great. Thank you.
Yep.
You
got it, guys.
Okay, well, folks, first of all, I want to thank Lou for coming out. What a great guest, Lou. You're just fantastic. You're welcome back on this program anytime, sir. Our audience has loved it. I mean, I've been looking at the chat, and they have Lou rocks. We love Lou. I mean, it's just you've got a cheering section here, sir. And Tim and I are part of that, to be perfectly honest.
Well, I love your audience. Like I said, you guys, if I can just take a real quick moment to address your audience. So for those of you who are watching this, allow me for just a moment to thank you sincerely for what you're doing, because ultimately you're the ones that are making it happen. You're the ones that are calling your congressional representatives. You're the ones having the conversation around the water cooler and around the dinner table. You're the ones that are making this happen. In some weird way, we're doing this for you, but in another way, you're doing it yourself, and you're doing it for the rest of us. So on behalf of me and my family, please thank you to this amazing audience for spending this evening with me. I know there's lots of things you could be doing, and you're making supper, and there's tomorrow's Easter for those who celebrate Easter, and preparing food and whatnot, and have family. So let me just leave you with this, Tommy and Tim and your audience. Happy Easter. Please take the time to spend with family. Quick shout out to Rob and Tom for everything they do as well. They've been working very hard behind the scenes, but thank you to all of you, and God bless you, and please be safe tomorrow. Spend your time with your family. For those of you who have family, take a moment to hug them and just tell them you love them. Just remind them how much they're loved. And with that said, I bid you all a farewell.
And we thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much again, Lou. Thank everybody out there in the audience. Thanks for coming. As always, really appreciate it. What a great show we had tonight, folks. We're going to do it again next Thursday. Catch us at the UFO Men Show. You know what we're doing over there. We're going back to basics, UFO videos, commentary, things of that nature. And as always, you can catch us here at the UFO Man Show every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks again.
Right. And Lou, if you could just hold on a second after we go off.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You got it.
All right. Everyone in the chat, thank you for watching and participating. Thanks for all the super chats and super stickers. Much appreciated. We're sorry we couldn't get to all your questions, but time kind of limits that. But we did get to a few of them. And we thank Mr. LUE Elizondo for answering them as well. Thanks to everybody who participated online, and from everybody on the panel, good night.